but let's see if this is going to work for us. Basically, what I'm going to show you guys today, there's so many ways that you can light paint. Sometimes when you say light paint, people think that you're actually taking your light and you're shining it at the camera, and you're writing, you're painting objects, you're doing all that stuff where you can actually see the light in the camera. The way I'm going to do it today is I'm actually going to paint my subject. I brought this spider-infested 8mm projector from my garage. I think it was my grandfather's. And I'm just going to show you kind of how I go about painting with light. And one of the reasons that I love doing that is just it gives you absolute complete control of where the light is. You know, if you're a landscape photographer or you shoot events or whatever, sometimes you're just stuck with the light you have. And, you know, working in the studio and doing light painting and stuff like that is just so freeing because, you know, you want that little highlight to be right where you want it. And with painting with light, you can do all that. So the way I approach it is just to, actually I'm just going to go ahead and show you kind of what I do. So I'm going to have to kind of talk loud because we don't have a roving mic. So also I'm going to raise this TV up so that you can see it a little better. What I've done is I'm tethered from my camera to the TV. So when I take a shot, you'll be able to see it. This is basically what the back of my camera screen is. So just a little bit bigger for you. This could get dangerous. Go ahead and just turn off focus so that you don't accidentally try and refocus again, because one of the ways that I like to work is I like to take multiple images and then blend them together in post at the end, so you have a lot more control. So that being said, if you change your focus, if you bump your camera, if your subject moves, you're going to have alignment issues. So you want to just make sure you're focused once, you're good, you're on a tripod, you're nice and stable, and that way you won't have any unaligning issues when it comes to post-production. So let's see here. I don't want to be in my view. All right, I'm just going to focus on that top reel. I am focused. I'm going to turn my camera on manual focus. One of the nice things about light painting is you don't have to necessarily use high ISO. I mean, a lot of nighttime photography, you've really got to crank the ISO up to capture stars and dim light and that kind of stuff. But with light painting, you can really leave your shutter open as long as you want. So if you want to do a 5-minute exposure and walk around and paint it, you know, you can totally do that. And you can keep your ISO very low, so your images are going to be very clean. For this particular one, this will absolutely work at ISO 100 just because it's such a small object and it should be fine. So the first thing I'm going to do is just, who's light painting my shot? Just kidding. I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to see if I can get an exposure at f8. And I'm just going to do, let's do a 15-second exposure. And I'm going to put on a timer here. You can use a cable release or a timer. I have a cable release, but I just find it easier just to use a timer. And the timer just gives you an opportunity to get from your camera back to your subject to start light painting. So since my subject is right here, I think 2 seconds is plenty. It also gets your hands off the camera and kills any vibration that you may introduce, so your shot's not blurry. So the very first shot I'm going to take, I'm just going to shoot this just like it is. And what I want to see is, do we have too much ambient light in the room to pollute our exposure? So I'm just going to let it roll. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm just curious how dark it is in here, because 15 seconds is quite a while for it to soak up some light. But at f8, and so there's a little bit of ambient, not a whole lot. I don't think that's probably going to be an issue, although you can see this projector, this line here, which I think Dennis was giving me grief about earlier. So, okay, let's see if we can make it a little darker. Let's go to ISO 50 and let's stop down a little more. And I could go to a 10-second exposure. Let's just try that. So and with a 10-second exposure, I'm definitely going to be probably needing to work in pieces, because to get everything done in 10 seconds is just not going to be feasible. I'd say that's pretty dark. There you go. That's almost as dark as Dennis likes it right there. That's like there's like 10 or 12 ND filters on that right there. All right. So now that we've got that, let me show you the first thing that you do not want to do ever. This is just something that I see a lot of, and it can just be always so much better. But the thing is to paint right behind your camera. And the reason you don't want to do this is because it just flattens everything out. You know, there's no, there's just no depth. It's just very flat. And all your shadows are just kind of behind, and it's just, you'll see when you start, painting from the side and raking the light and skimming it across the surfaces. I mean, just like you would with a landscape shot, you don't necessarily want the sun directly behind your back. If you're trying to capture beautiful shadows in the hills or whatever, you kind of want that side light. So, if at all possible, I recommend not painting right behind your camera. The other thing that I want to just demonstrate real quick is holding the light still. That's not really a good thing, and you'll see why here in just a second. A couple things are going to happen. One, you're probably going to blow out your image. And the other thing is, look at how harsh this shadow is. Can everybody see this okay? Kind of, hopefully? Yeah. The shadows are just really, really harsh. You know, they're pretty, because you're not moving that light source. So if I do one more, and this time, if I'm just constantly moving the light, if you look at the shadows on the actual object, you see how they're moving. So over a 10-second time period, that shadow is going to be very soft. So now it's a much softer shadow in there. You don't have the harsh, hard line. So I'm almost happy with the. That might be a little too dark. Let's just take a look at this histogram. Does everybody understand how to read a histogram?
No.
No? Does anybody know how to work a camera? Let's see. Right? All right, my apologies. I'm just fumbling around up here in the dark. So if you look at my histogram, obviously I'm very much on the dark side. The left side of the histogram is for dark, and the right side is your highlights. Yeah, that's typical. There is a little bit of highlight information here. It's probably not as bright as it could be, but again, I'm fighting some ambient light in here, so for this purpose here, it's probably fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and light paint this and kind of show you the way I would go about doing it. So I'm going to just start hitting different portions of this, and it's really okay if I get my hand or the flashlight in the shot, because I'm going to be able to remove that stuff in post. So I'm not really worried about that. So that particular shot, I'm just trying to highlight this reel. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to do one more with a little bit more of a light on the front of it. And the closer your subject, your light source is to your subject, the softer the light will be as well. So that's kind of cool. So I would probably say that's cool. I'll keep that one, and I'm just going to go to my next element, which is going to be this other little reel right here. So again, this could be, this could be anything. It doesn't have to be a tabletop setup. You could be, doing a building, and maybe you're doing the doorway, or, you're doing a car, and you're lighting, from the inside, or you can really just do, yeah, that's too much. That's all kinds of blown out. The other thing I do is I'm kind of cupping the front of the light with my hand to kind of make the beam a little bit dimmer. That's better.
Yeah.
So now I'm just going to hit the back edge, because I definitely want to separate this from the background. So I'm going to throw some light just around the edge. See if I get a separation there. Not really a fan of that. So the cool thing is you can just play, There's no right or wrong. You just kind of paint to taste and see what you like. And
So is it going to be better if you stack the photos, if you do it in that way, or can you actually accomplish getting the whole thing
you could
light
do it
painted?
all in one shot. I just think it would be very challenging.
Yeah.
I prefer to stack just because I have just that much more control. Like if I get it all together, let's say I spend 3 minutes painting it, and I go, oh, I blew out that one reel. Then I got to redo everything, and it's really hard to remember everything you did. Like I really like this. We've got a nice highlight on this edge, and then, dude, really? Didn't Jimmy just tell us to turn our phones off?
I'm glad that was your fault.
Such a sweet ringtone.
I know. Sorry guys, I gotta go out and take this. No, I'm kidding. I'm a mess today. Sorry guys. So here you can see I accidentally got myself in the shot. Whoops. That doesn't matter because we can take that out in Photoshop very easily. So I'm pretty happy with this edge. I really like the gradient. I like the hard line right there. And then just so to get back to your question, Sally, I just think that it's just more control to do it in pieces. And you really don't lose any quality. If anything, you gain quality, because if you are doing a longer exposure, if you open your shutter for that long, you may see hot pixels. Your sensor just heats up and you'll get these little red, green dots.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that's just my cheap camera, but I don't know. I'm going to do the other side. Now again, the beauty of doing this in pieces is if I don't like any of these exposures, I don't have to use them. I can just chuck them.
Hey Neil,
Yeah?
I've seen in a lot of your pictures you use colored light.
Uh-huh.
What type of other lights do you use to achieve that effect?
So what I've got here, what I did, because I'm cheap, is I just went down to the drugstore and picked up some of those colored dividers that you would put in like a binder. So they're basically just colored gels. So, I mean, you can buy real gels if you want, but I just cut these out of those little folders, and then I just put Velcro. I just kind of, hold on, wait, I can do this. Here we go. I just put gaffer tape around the edges and Velcro on them, and then I have Velcro on my flashes, so I can just quickly go right over the tip of the flash. But they also work for stuff like this. Like if I wanted to do some red light, we could certainly do some red. I'm probably holding this right in front of my camera like an idiot. Yeah, it's a little dark. I should have brought a bigger, powerful, bigger flashlight. So as far as going back to the question of what lights do I use, I do have, a bunch of different flashlights. I'll use headlamps sometimes. I have a big, spotlight that you can get at like Costco for 50 bucks, and it's 20 billion candle power, and blind people at 3 miles. The problem with those is they don't last very long. 20 minutes and it's done. So you got to work quick. But if you're at Tahoe and you want to light paint bonsai rock from the shore, something like that is awesome because you can, it'll reach. So yeah, just lots of different flashlights, stuff like that. Let me go ahead and just get a couple more shots here. I'm going to just try and do something from the top here to get this piece. Because I want to have enough pieces to actually put this together and post in the group so you can see the result of this. I was hoping to be able to do that here, but it's just not going to work out. But you will see this shot put together.
On the bed.
Yes. Just trying to light the...
Yeah.
That looks good.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. So, one more. I'm just going to try and get this side again. Really trying to keep that angle nice and low to kind of bring out the texture of those vents. So you get some nice shot. And what if I do one more? Again, I'm just giving myself pieces to work with. Sorry, I'm probably blinding somebody.
It's okay. It's just.
It's just you guys. Just your friendly Nevada photographers. It's just another piece. And then I just noticed there's vents back here. Does that show through? Kinda, a little bit. Let's try it. Nothing?
No.
Just a little bit at the bottom.
A little bit at the bottom.
A little bit's all I need, just a little accent here and there. Yeah, that's a little bit. I think it's a little dark. A little on the dark side. So I'm just going to hit this little can right there. And then the other thing that I like to do is I like to give myself just a general, overall, everything bright, just in case I get back into the computer and I go, oh man, that one piece is so dark, I have nothing to fill right there. I can go back to an exposure like that where everything is pretty lit. Oh yeah, that's real bright. Okay. There we go. Let's try it over here.
Yeah.
This is the dimmest flashlight they make. And the batteries are dying. No, I'm kidding. These are brand new batteries. This light sucks. Don't ever buy a mag light. Although the one thing that I will say is I do really prefer an incandescent flashlight. They're really hard to find these days. Everything's LED, and the LEDs tend to be very green or blue. The incandescent just has that warm feel to it. Of course, you can white balance it and change it to whatever you want if you're shooting raw. But the one thing that I would say is if you can at all, try to keep your light temperature consistent. Like if I were lighting with this light and then I also had an LED, to balance that is going to be really difficult because I'm going to swing it one way and one light's going to look good and the other one's going to turn green, or you guys know what I mean? It's just try and keep your light temperature consistent if you can. The other thing we need is we need the beam. This thing is so old, I can't even imagine it still works, but it does. Absolutely crazy. Oh, look at that, it's already lit. What am I doing? Let's shoot that. I like the inside light. Where's the beam? Should it have a beam? You've had a beam before? Oh, dear.
Probably the film gate.
It looks a little hot. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I just didn't know that they would appreciate that.
You could probably adjust that in post.
Yeah, I think it's, well, it doesn't look like it's blown out on the histogram.
Oh,
Maybe the slightest, tiniest bit, but I'm not gonna worry about it. I do wanna see if we can get a beam out of this thing. I wonder if it's because you put the film in, Dennis.
yeah. The film gate's got it blocked.
It's the white part of the film.
Okay, so I said never mess with your prop when you're in the middle of a session. I'm gonna mess with my prop. I think the film is actually killing some of the beam. So what I'm gonna do is just take this out.
If you had a little dust to blow, it'll give you
There we
a nice
go.
beam.
Now we got beamage. Okay, so I didn't think the Capitol would appreciate me, bringing a fog machine in here to really see that beam. Well, what I did bring is just a bottle of water. So in order to see light, you really need something in the air, some sort of particulate.
Oh my gosh.
So that should work, right? Is that okay, Kiki? Am I going to get us all in trouble? She's not saying anything. All right, so I'm exposing.
She left the room.
This thing may blow up because I just shot a bunch of water at it. Oh, dude, are you kidding me? All right, here we go. We're gonna have to up my exposure a little bit. I think I made an angle. Listen to that thing.
Don't have an extinguisher.
So I'm just gonna up my ISO. I'm gonna drop to F8. We're gonna try this again. I'd like it to be brighter though. I could just go longer too as well. Right, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to... Okay, here we go. If it explodes, I'm really sorry. Spraying my camera? This thing's been underwater. I know. Without a housing.
They do really well.
They do.
Are these virtually your baby days?
I don't know. I'm probably like ruining them, huh? Spraying water on them. There we go. Okay, so everything else is way too bright, but I can take that into Photoshop and make that work. I just wanted to have a nice beam. I'm really loving that black line of the projector screen going through there. That's pretty nice. This is not. But what this does give me is it gives me the angle. Even if I have to recreate this, I now have a perspective that I can match and what it would actually look like. Man, I soaked that thing. Sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to soak your... So this one basically gives you different shapes, different colors. So, even if I just left something like that on my screen and painted with that, let's kind of modernize this image here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this, and I don't know if it's bright enough. I should have turned the brightness on my phone up. Let's see what that does. Oh, I did? It's gonna be all blown out?
Should be pretty bright.
Oh my goodness. Right, oh, kind of dark.
Yeah, not really dark.
Not really dark. Okay, we didn't do the 30-second exposure, sorry.
It's your phone, you just have that.
Yeah, I know.
Make it happen. Yeah. See?
That's kind of interesting, it's kind of fun. I don't know that I would ever use it for anything, but let me go ahead and shorten this exposure a little bit here.
Yes, that's what it looks like.
All right, let's try something else. I'm going to turn the brightness on my phone all the way up. That would be helpful. And let's go. Let's just go with the screen that I've got on my phone here. Let's just do this one more time. Now that I've shortened everything. Hello. Okay, so I'm just going to do one pass around, and then I'm going to go out of the frame. I'm just trying to kind of create like a swoosh of light around the projector. Let's see what happened. Man, I'm terrible at this. But again, you know, it's just something that you can play with. I mean, really, if I was going to use an effect like this, I think what would probably be cooler would just be kind of use it as a background. Quiet here. Wow. Heckler.
Turn the wheel.
Let's see what that does.
That was cool.
It's garbage. But anyway, it's just showing you that anything, you know, that emits light can potentially be used for something cool. Cover that up. Let's go ahead and look at some stuff on the projector, which I have to now turn back on. I'm sorry. I might be able to do it from here.
Lights.
Although I may fall and kill you.
I don't think that's a
Sorry. Okay, so sorry for all the bugs in that presentation, guys. I hope you got something out of it. Oh yeah.
Be careful.
It'll be my turn.
No, I got this.
Yeah.
famous last.
Thank you, David. Oh, so now you guys can probably see these a little better. These are just, you know, cheapy, homemade. You know, it's the end product that matters, not what these things look like. But yeah, I just have 2 strips of Velcro on here, and I just put these on the front of my speed light. You could do something similar with a flashlight if you cut them in that size and shape. Okay. So I would have loved to have taken the actual images that we just shot at the projector and have done something like this live, but logistically we just couldn't do it. So what I've got here is a series of images of another still life I shot, which is, you know, just this whole pirate theme. And so if you look at all these different ones, they're not as diverse probably as what we just did with the projector, but you can see here, this first one, obviously, this area here is all in shadow, whereas this one's lighter. You know, this one's got some fog. That one's got a lot of fog. And just as far as the fog stuff, I just use a regular fog machine, and you can pick them up super cheap. I think we got ours on Craigslist for like 25 bucks or something. It's a lot of fun to play with. I didn't think the legislature would want me bringing in a fog machine, otherwise that would have made that beam so much better, and I wouldn't have had to soak anything. So basically the workflow for taking your images, so let's say you've just done your still life, you've light painted it. What I do first is I'll just go through, you know, I may have 20 shots, but you know, if you look through them, you may see, oh, I only need 5 of those to really do what I want. So I'm going to narrow down my selection, which is kind of what I'm showing here. And then you're going to want to make any adjustments to each frame before you start layering them in Photoshop. So if you use Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw or anything like that to edit your work, go ahead and just edit all your shots. The way I usually do is I'll edit one, and then I'll cut and paste that developed setting to every one of them so they're all consistent, though they don't have to be. If you wanted to change the white balance on one of them, you know, that's totally up to you. So once you have all your shots picked out and edited, the next thing you're going to do, this is just a shortcut the way I do it. In Adobe Bridge, you can go up to Tools, and then Photoshop, and then load files into Photoshop layers. And that'll just take each one of your images that's selected. You see I have 5 images selected here, and it'll load them into Photoshop and put each one on a separate layer. You can do it manually, you know, just open an image, cut it, paste it, open, cut, paste, open, cut, paste. This is just a little shortcut. I'm sure there's a way to do this in Lightroom. I don't use Lightroom, so I don't know, but if it's in Bridge and Adobe Camera Raw, I'm sure it's in Lightroom. So once you do that, now we're into Photoshop here. And as you can see in my layers panel, what the computer's done is it's loaded each one of these 5 files into a separate layer. You have the light that's on these, you know, the shell and the starfish. And then I have this image here, which doesn't have any of that light. Where did my mouse cursor go? There it is.
Neil,
Yes, sir.
how about taking the projector off of the table because it blocks
I'm
what
sorry.
you're trying to show us?
This
Yeah, the projector's covering the screen. On the
The
table.
on the
projector.
table.
You know, the wet projector.
Sorry. I can move my camera too, huh? My soaking wet camera. Thank you for saying something.
Yep.
Is that good?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so what I was saying here is we have this image that doesn't have any light on the shell or the starfish. If you look at the one above it, it does. But if you look up here at the skull, it's not as bright as that first one. So by combining the two, just with the lighten mode, it's combining the lightest portions of the image, and you're not having to do anything. No masking, no crazy Photoshop wizardry. You're just simply changing that blending mode to lighten. If I forward to my next frame here, here's the next shot. This is just with a normal blending mode again, so we're just seeing that shot as it was. If I change it to lighten, now we've got all that fog back over these 2 images that are below it. If I step forward again, I kind of did a shortcut here when I was making these slides. So this is all the layers with lighten turned on. And you might go, well, that's really too bright now, and it's just overpowering. So the cool thing is since we did it in pieces, I could just turn off, you can see the little eye on this guy right here. I just turned off that one layer. And so you can kind of mix and match and you know, come up with the light that you really like.
So Neil, does it matter what order they go in or what action?
Not at all. No. The one thing that I would suggest doing that I didn't do in this example is I normally name my layers. So like if this were the projector that we just shot, I would probably name these like, you know, reel, beam, reels on table, or just so you know when you're coming through, you can just know what you're working with without having to like turn them off and on and try and figure out where you are. But that's really it. Now, you can start doing masking if you want. I mean, this is just simply changing the blending mode to lighten. No masking, no nothing. It's just as easy as you could possibly imagine to do this. This technique will, work with anything where you're adding light. If you're doing, say, fireworks and you want to stack 10 shots together, you can do the same thing. Just load them up into layers and change all the blending modes to light, and then all of a sudden you have all your fireworks. Just, anything that you're just adding that's just based on brightness will work. That's basically what the Star Trails program do as well. Like if anybody uses Star Stacks or Star Tracker or any of those, when you shoot multiple shots to get your Star Trails, it's basically just adding the light to each frame.
You got about 10 minutes.
Okay, so just to summarize my workflow as far as putting something like that together, you're going to obviously create your light painted images. You're going to want to make all your adjustments before you start bringing them into Photoshop, because at that point you're just basically stacking them. Select all your files, load them into Photoshop. And like I said, I just used that, let me go back here. Oh, that's not back. Oh, that's way back. Here we go. Oh, look at that. Now I'm going to edit my PowerPoint. There we go. This guy right here. Tools, Photoshop, load files into Photoshop layers. That's just a huge time saver, especially if you're working with, a lot of layers. And then, like I said, just adjust to taste. I mean, you can turn off your layers, you can turn them on, you can go back and like right up. Yeah, it's so dark in here. Sorry. You can adjust your opacity on a layer. Like if you say, oh, I really like that effect, but I just wish it was 50% less. Well, you can dial down each layer separately and really tweak it just to your taste, to where you want it, to where things are nice. And then I just have some images just to throw up and talk about. This was light painted. This is obviously in Washoe Valley when the guy still had his hand. I've heard he's had a horrible accident and his hand's like on the ground now or something. I don't know. I didn't do it. But this was just. I believe we lit this with the big spotlight that I have, and like I said, it's like 20 million candle power or something like that. But it was done in multiple passes, and obviously with the Star Trails, what I usually do when I'm shooting light painting and Star Trails is I'll get my Star Trails first. I'll just let the camera expose for half an hour or however long I'm going to go. And then after that's done, I'll do my light painting, and then I typically just have to erase the stars that were there in the light painted shots. Otherwise, you can end up with little dots all through your sky where it wasn't connected to the trail. But so this was just, it looks like I painted some from behind him. I was probably standing back here somewhere. I moved over to this side of him and hit him here, and just kind of moving around the subject and just lighting him from different angles to really try and make it more dimensional rather than just, flat from one point.
Neil, how do you not blow off the foreground?
Can you repeat the question too, so people know what
How do you not blow off the foreground?
How do I not blow out the foreground? I probably have, well, there's a couple things. I could have taken that foreground from one of the Star Trail exposures and just blended it back in. I think it's really like, how do you not blow out anything? I think I was probably just mindful that I wasn't blowing out the foreground. You're just saying because the light was so close to his leg or something that it would have, I think just, even with the big spotlight, I've used a reflector, like a big silver reflector to wrap around the whole front of it to try and make a giant snoot for it. Because that thing will spill like nobody's business. I mean, it'll just light up the whole parking lot. So yeah, definitely, just make a snoot. Does everybody know what a snoot is?
No.
It's basically, it's just something that narrows the beam of light. So if you have, say, a flashlight, if you have a copy of Nevada Magazine. So if I wanted to make a, oh, there we go. Is this Nevada Magazine?
No, but it's.
It's the program, okay.
Even better.
So even something as simple as a rolled up piece of paper, like if you,
I'm trying to show that what you have in your hand.
oh, sorry, it's one of the programs.
I'm trying to show how you were putting it on there.
You scared?
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, I was gonna say if you put that on there, obviously that's gonna narrow, like if I show you the beam of light on the wall, and then I put this on it, this is a terrible example. But basically, you're just narrowing the beam of light. So that's all a snoot does. I mean, you can buy commercial snoots for big strobes, or you can buy them for speed lights. But basically, you're just wrapping your light with something to prevent it from spilling off the edges, so you don't pollute your foreground or get it in people's eyes.
Louder, Christy. Sorry, Neil.
Yes.
I have a question on your setup on that. Because it's two different pieces, like, do you focus first on the man and get that all done and then go back and do the star trails? Or is it something that you're trying to do at the same time?
This particular image is just focused once on the man. I found that focusing on the stars really doesn't matter when they're blurred. And actually, if they're slightly defocused, it just makes the trails wider and thicker. So in this particular case, I just focused once on the guy's face and just let it go from there. I have actually done really defocused star trails, like to the point where they were these big balls. And it was really interesting because you just never see that. But you know, the star trails were like these huge quarter-inch trails, it was interesting. Not on purpose, of course, but I did it. Here's an example of just an old ghost town, just playing with some lights. This was not done with flashlights. This was done with speed lights. So just the little detachable flashes that go on the hot shoe on top of your camera. Those are speed lights. And again, with these kind of gels that I have. So really, it was just as simple as whoops. Okay, just as simple as going inside the building, putting a yellow gel on and just popping the flash a couple times to get the inside of these buildings lit up. And then just coming outside with a blue gel and then just hitting the sides of them. The one thing that I would say about light painting is obviously all this ambient light that's in the foreground and on the ground, that's from the moon, and that's really cool because I've done light painting at night when there's no moon, and everything just goes black, and I actually would rather have a little bit of ambient light just to fill the shadows. So don't be afraid of going out at night if there's a moon to light paint. It's not like the Milky Way where you really want it to be dark. Light painting, you can get away with quite a bit of moon. Anybody know where this is? I don't. I got a flat tire there once, and it was like 3 in the morning, and I'm like, hey, look at that thing, I'm gonna go light paint that.
Such a nice one.
That road is awful. That road is awful. It's a true story. And I'm not sure what the story is behind these license plates, but I just thought it was cool. So again, there was a big moon, so that's why I've got all this ambient light. But this was just a real simple one, just standing off camera left, probably with a flashlight, just to kind of throw some light onto those things. Yeah, that road's awesome. I highly recommend that you all go out and drive that this weekend. This one, I believe you were with me, Jackie. Yeah, this is out by Fort Churchill. Is this Buckland? Buckland Station. You're not supposed to be in there. I don't know how those lights got on in there. It's really strange. Actually, the secret behind this was just the lights that are inside the building are just those little LED tea lights that you can buy. You can pick them up at the dollar store, and they just look like little round tea lights, and they have an LED, and I just set them inside the windowsills. And if you leave your shutter open long enough, man, it's amazing how much light those little things will put out. But again, this was probably a series of 5 or 6 exposures. We did one for the lights inside the building, one for the, I'm not sure why the do I have a real mouse? Oh, I do. I've been using that pad the whole time and I could have used a mouse. One for the porch, one for this side of the building, and I believe we did one for the foreground here. Okay, I'm just about done. This is just an old truck that's out in the desert that, yeah, Dixie Valley, that we had a blast just doing all kinds of colored light. So this is a mixture of just flashlights. I believe the headlights, these are two like headlamps that you wear on your head, and the headlights were just broken out, so we just set the headlamps in there and just let them burn out. And then to get the beams, again, we needed something in the air, so we just kicked dust. You know, it's just dirt, it's dark out there, man. Yeah, no, that's legit. That's not Photoshop. That's, you know, it's rare for me, but that's real. Yeah. And that's pretty much everything I had. So what I will do is I will definitely put that image together with the projector so you can kind of see how that turned out. Hopefully it turns out cooler than I think it's going to. It's a little challenging, and I appreciate you guys being patient with me with all the little hiccups and, you know, projectors and darkness and all that stuff.
15 minutes for questions or for a break or whatever, so if you have questions, hit them up now.
Yeah, and if you guys think of something after the fact, I don't know, I'm probably friends with a lot of you on Facebook, but if I'm not, send me a friend request. I'm always happy to, you know, answer questions or just send them to Jackie. If you sit in the front row, you get thrown under the bus.
Oh, yeah.
Constantly.
You only want to sit in the front row.
Right?
I'll sit on the floor.
Thank you.